Okay, it's 5:31. Welcome, everyone. We'll go ahead and call our meeting to order with a roll call from our city clerk, Kathy Valdez.
The record shall reflect that all members are present.
Okay, and Councilmember Fox is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening.
We got that big delay. All right. Please rise, remove your hats. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks.
I want to thank the entire City Council for participating in yesterday's Veterans Day recognition. Our salute to service Veterans Day ceremony was a great success, and we hope that even more veterans will come next year so that we can honor them. Tonight, we would like to once again pay tribute to all of our veterans who have so bravely served our country and to honor the dedicated troops currently serving at home and abroad. We are very grateful to them and their families for the sacrifices that they make every day and have made in the past. Now we'll hear from our city clerk, Kathy Valdez, for some procedural items.
Thank you, Mayor. In accordance with the Brown Act, I'd like to announce that as a result of convening simultaneous meetings, the members of the Buena Sanitation District will receive compensation of $147.75 for the district meeting pursuant to Buena Sanitation District Ordinance 2006-1. I would like to remind everyone that the Vista Municipal Code requires members of the public to observe order and decorum at the meeting and to conduct themselves in a courteous manner. The ordinance was adopted to allow for public input and to facilitate city business without disruption of the meeting. Applause is appropriate for items listed in the presentation portion of the agenda only. Students wishing to receive credit for attending this evening's meeting must stay for a minimum of 1 hour. However, we ask that you stay for the duration of the discussion rather than leaving in the middle of it. When you're ready to leave, you may ask one of the staff members at the back of the room to sign your paper.
To speak on an item on the agenda tonight, please fill out a speaker slip with the number of the item you'd like to speak on and give it to the clerk, secretary, staff here at the dais. Speaker slips are available on the table just outside City Council chambers. For members of the public participating via Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature or press *9 on your phone. We will announce when to raise your hand to indicate that you'd like to make a comment on the specific item being discussed. Speakers will have 3 minutes each to address the City Council. Now we'll hear from our City Attorney, Walter Chung, on approval of tonight's agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. We are removing public hearing number 1 from the agenda tonight. The parties have reached a tentative settlement and need some additional time to formalize the documentation and signatures, and we will be continuing it to December 9th if the item is needed.
That's good news indeed. Now we'll go to our City Manager, John Conley, for approval of the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. No changes to the remainder of the agenda.
Okay, thank you. We have one presentation this evening, and I'd like to invite my fellow council members to join me at the lectern for that presentation. All right, we have a proclamation declaring November 29, 2025 as Small Business Saturday in the City of Vista. And accepting this proclamation this evening are Vista Chamber of Commerce CEO Rachel Beld and CVBID Advisory Board Chair TJ Crossman. Would you please join us? Hello. Can we ask you to show this off to everybody while I'll read it for us here. Our proclamation says, whereas the City of Vista acknowledges and appreciates the essential contribution of local small businesses to the enhancement of our economy and community, whereas according to the United States Small Business Administration, there are 34.7 million small businesses in the United States, which represent 99.7% of firms with paid employees, accounts for 61.1% of net new jobs created since 1995, and employ 45.9% of the private sector workforce. Whereas it is noted that 68 cents of every dollar spent at a small business in the U.S. stays within the local community, and that every dollar spent at a small business generates an additional 48 cents in local economic activity through the purchasing of local goods and services. Last year, 59% of American consumers aware of Small Business Saturday participated by shopping or dining at a small, independently owned retailer or restaurant on that day. Whereas the City of Vista is committed to supporting local businesses that generate jobs, stimulate our economy, and strengthen our communities, and various advocacy groups, along with public and private organizations across the nation, have designated the Saturday following Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday. Now, therefore, as mayor of the City of Vista, and on behalf of the members of the Vista City Council, we do hereby encourage the residents of the City of Vista, as well as individuals throughout our community and nationwide, to support small businesses and merchants on Small Business Saturday, celebrating its 16th anniversary in 2025, and to shop small throughout the year. And we do hereby proclaim November 29, 2025, as Small Business Saturday in the City of Vista. All right. TJ, would you like to say a few words on behalf of small business owners? What happened? Would you like to say anything on behalf of small business owners? Well, thank you. And as a small business owner myself, and we've got a couple of other small business owners on the council, we know how important what you do is every day in our community. You've been an amazing member of our community. We appreciate not only your business efforts, but also your philanthropy and helping all the people in our city. Thank you, TJ. All right. Can we take a picture with you? Aaron, should we say shop local on the count of three? How about that? 1, 2, 3. Shop local! All right. Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Thanks, Councilman. Any member of the public may address the City Council on agency-related matters that are not on the agenda by requesting to speak during this section of the agenda. If you are participating via Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature or press *9 now if you'd like to speak. The number of speakers that will be heard during this segment is limited to 10. Any remaining speakers will be heard under the second oral communications item. Looks like we have 2 or 3 on Zoom. Seeing none here in the council chambers, we'll start with Madison Rapp on Zoom, and then we will hear from Judy Strang on Zoom. Madison Rapp.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. I'm here to speak tonight because I'm concerned about the growing evidence of harm from today's high-potency marijuana products. A major new review published in the Annals of Internal Medicine, covering nearly 100 studies and over 200,000 participants, found a strong link between high THC products and serious mental health risks, including psychosis, schizophrenia, and cannabis addiction. About 70% of studies showed an association with psychosis, and 3 out of 4 found a link to cannabis use disorder. As a mother of 3 who drives by the billboards and by the stores advertising marijuana, this is extremely concerning. Researchers also found that potent forms of vapes, like shatter and dabs, which contain up to 90% THC, often worsen anxiety and depression, especially in young users. For comparison, marijuana decades ago typically contained just 2 to 4% THC, and now it's up to 90% THC. Vista has allowed licensed cannabis businesses, and I respect the work the city has done to regulate this industry. But this new research highlights the importance of continued caution, strong enforcement, community education, and policies that put health, and youth protection above commercial pressure. Thank you for your time in prioritizing the well-being of Vista's residents.
Next, we'll hear from Judy Strang.
Good evening, Vista City Council and Mayor Franklin. I enjoyed the proclamation you did for small businesses because we're a small business owner as well. Had a pharmacy for many years. I wanted to share a couple of thoughts. One, an experience I had when I picked up my grandchildren from elementary school and drove them home and drove by a couple of pot shops. The one of particular interest to me was the one called the Cake House, and it's painted turquoise. And my kids wanted to know if they could stop in and get a cupcake. I said no, not happening. But you can see how duplicitous it is to paint a store turquoise, and you've probably seen the billboards for the Cake House. It also has the big piece of cake up there on the billboard. So I just wanted to bring to your attention as a grandparent who, along with the parents of these grandchildren, are working very hard to help our young children understand what good choice making looks like and how permanent is bad choice making, and how confusing it is for us to have billboards in our town, and how it interferes with what we're trying to accomplish. I was kind of impressed with a statement from Americans for Non-Smokers' Rights, who've added marijuana to all of its educational prevention efforts. They're kind of leaders in the tobacco world, but they have now added marijuana. And they want to make their most recent fact sheet says, secondhand marijuana smoke and vape contains as many cancer-causing substances and toxic chemicals as secondhand tobacco smoke. They go on to reference other similarities between these two businesses, tobacco shops and marijuana storefronts, and how in many ways they have in common trying to entice a younger generation. Here in San Diego County, 90% of all drug use begins by the age of 19. So it does matter what our young people are seeing and what we're trying to portray as grandparents and parents. Thank you for letting me share this thought this evening.
Thank you very much. And seeing no other requests for oral communications, we'll close the opportunity for oral communications during this council meeting, and we'll move on to our consent calendar. The recommendations on the following consent calendar will be enacted in one motion unless an item is removed from the calendar. Any member of the public may remove an item by submitting a request to speak card to the clerk secretary, by using the raise your hand feature on Zoom, or by pressing *9. Items removed from the consent calendar will be considered immediately following the adoption of the calendar. We have 4 consent items this evening. Councilmember Fox.
Motion to approve the consent calendar?
Councilmember O'Donnell.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. That item is approved unanimously. And our public hearing number 1 has been removed from tonight's agenda, so that'll bring us to the first of 3 discussion items. The first is regarding the proposed Oak Drive raised pedestrian crossing. If any members of the public wish to speak on this item, they may indicate so by using the raise their hand feature, by pressing *9, or submitting a request to speak card here at the dais. Speakers will be called upon after the presentation. Our engineering division manager, Sam Hassanen, will provide the staff report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a follow-up on this item from the October 28th City Council meeting. And at that meeting, the City Council directed us to provide renderings of the proposed crosswalk on Oak Drive at Isabella Way. And the rendering shows 2 options that we discussed last time. The one on the left shows a raised crosswalk without pop-outs or curb extensions. And that shows that where we leave a gap in the drainage gutters, as well as a curb ramp on one side of the street, and the curb ramp exists on the other side. And the other option is shown on the right that shows curb pop-outs, which is a more involved option, and that would be a curb gutter sidewalk that extends into the street. The City Council also directed us to get input from the school district, which we reached out, and through the superintendent and the school principal, we were informed that they had not received complaints during school hours about speeding. However, they have heard from the residents about speeding on the street after hours. but also that they don't have any specific concerns with the proposed crosswalk. So the recommendation is to discuss the proposed raised pedestrian crossing at Oak Drive and Isabella Way and provide further direction to staff. Thank you.
Okay, and we have 4 public speakers on this item. So we will hear from them now. I will start with, is it Myrna Casillas? Yes, please come forward. And then after, we will hear from Rufina Carrion, followed by Jaime Reyes, followed by Zoila Ramos.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council, staff, and Mr. Jeff Fox. My name is Myrna Casillas. We appreciate your previous attention to the safety hazards at Oak Drive and Isabella Way North. We urge the council to approve the necessary funding and action this week to immediately install the raised pedestrian crossing and allocate a dedicated crossing guard. Child safety cannot wait. Please prioritize this resolution. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from Rufina Carrion, followed by Jaime Reyes.
Buenas noches, alcalde y vicealcalde, consejo personal y señor Jeff Fox. Mi nombre es Rufina Carrión. Anticipamos la pronta aprobación y resolución de la propuesta del artículo D1 para el cruce elevado y guardia del cruce en Oak Drive e Isabella Way North. Gracias por garantizar esta medida. Seguridad crítica de promulgue sin demora. Gracias por su tiempo.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from Jaime Reyes, followed by Zoila Ramos.
Buenas noches, alcalde, vicealcalde, consejero personal y señor Jeff Fox. Mi nombre es Jaime Reyes. Gracias nuevamente por su tiempo con respecto a la necesidad urgente en un cruce peatonales elevado y nuevo guardia de cruce en Oak Drive e Isabella Way North. Esperamos que la resolución de la propuesta del punto D1 avance de inmediato. Este es un problema de seguridad crítico para nuestros niños y esperamos que sea priorizado y aprobado. Gracias a todos por su tiempo.
Thank you. Zoila Ramos.
Buenas noches. Estamos aquí todos los vecinos, un grupo representando a nuestros vecinos de la comunidad de Los Robles para agradecerles su atención a nuestro pedido porque es algo fundamental para todos los vecinos, todo el conjunto de personas que vivimos en esta ciudad de Vista. Queremos lo mejor para los chicos, para los grandes, y lo único que yo deseo siempre es apoyarlos a ustedes para que nos hagan mejoras en estas situaciones. Yo estoy como vocera de mi grupo y yo les agradezco a Jeff Fox, a la señorita Corina Contreras por estar siempre pendiente de nuestras necesidades, ¿no? Gracias por todo, John Franklin. Señor, estoy un poco nerviosa. Y les agradezco mucho su atención, su deseo de ayudarnos y que esto es una ayuda para todos. No están en distinción de partidos políticos o cualquier cosa. Nosotros creo que tenemos que ser unidos como personas y llevar bien la vida para que así nuestros hijos tengan el mejor ejemplo. Gracias.
Gracias. Okay, that will conclude the opportunity for public comment on this item, and now we'll hear from Councilmember Contreras.
I know, there's a major delay. It's all good. This is the third meeting with the little. Tenemos un montón aquí que tenemos que puchar y no está sirviendo muy bien. Pero más le quería decir al público muchas gracias por su comentario y por estar en esta lucha de mejoras ya hace mucho tiempo que se necesita, y no nomás aquí, pero de ahorita nos estamos enfocando aquí. I just wanted to tell the public, thank you so much for coming, for your comment. It's great to see the community support. I know that this is something that's been needed, this type of improvement. And we need improvements throughout the city, but right now we're focused on this particular improvement. I do have some questions, Sam. On concept A, this is the one that is the $60,000 concept?
That's correct.
Okay. And does this have flashing beacons?
Yes, both options have the push button activated rapid flashing beacons.
Okay. And the difference between concept A and concept B, I'm seeing the placements different, and I'm also seeing that with concept B, is it that it takes away potentially some space on either side?
So option A would be right at the intersection, the northerly Isabella intersection. And option A completely avoids the drainage, basically the cross gutter on the far side of the picture and the regular gutter on the near side. And that's why it's obviously more straightforward. Then option B would have to go a little bit further south if we're doing the curb pop outs to avoid the cross gutter on the other side of the street. And that would, both options actually would require the removal of about 8 to 10 parking spaces.
How many?
About 8 to 10.
Okay.
Visibility and as well as for space for the crosswalk.
And how long and wide is the crosswalk?
10 feet wide, and then the length would be the width of the street.
Okay. So for both concept A and concept B, there's a removal of the same amount of parking?
Based
Because-
on my just visual inspection out there, I think option B would be a little more, could
Yeah.
be even up to 12.
Because I'm seeing on concept A, it's on the corner and there's a daylighting law, so there's no parking
Yes,
there. So,
there's already some red curb. That would be,
Correct.
it would benefit both options, but option B would probably require a little more.
yeah. You know, I think this would be a major improvement. There's not any other mid-block crossing. And how long is the stretch from, is it Palomar? I'm forgetting the,
Monumar is the next one that has a stop sign on a crosswalk to the north, and then to the south is the roundabout,
right.
at least 1,000 feet between those two intersections.
But we don't have any kind of raised pedestrian crossing in the entire stretch of Oak Drive.
Correct. we
Right.
do not.
This would be one of the first things. You know, I just, in the times that I've transversed through here, either through my bike or in a car, I do see a significant amount of speeding. I would, you know, I think a lot of this is occurring probably later in the day as folks are coming back home. And that's kind of like a prime time for people to be out walking as well. So, you know, I'm in favor of concept A. I would love to hear from the rest of my council, but, you know, I think that this is just a critical improvement, and I will go ahead and make a motion that we move forward with option A.
Councilmember O'Donnell. I'm sorry, Councilmember Fox, excuse me.
Thank you. With the pop-outs, they look approximately about 2 feet or so? They pop out into that intersection? Is that
It'll probably be more like 3-4 feet. This is just kind of a rendering, conceptual rendering.
reasonable? That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, I think out of the two options, I do think the option concept A seems to be a little bit more straightforward. Did we look at the difference between doing something like concept A and putting something like 2 speed bumps along Oak there?
So the issue with Oak is that the vast majority of it is on the primary emergency response route. So there's really not enough length that has that gap.
Okay.
To
So
allow
like
for
we
2
might
speed
be able to
bumps.
squeeze one in, but probably not two.
One at most.
Okay. Okay. Well, then I think out of the available options, I think that does make the most sense. Okay, yeah. And I think if we did, since we did have the opportunity to speak with the school and they assured us that it was mostly after hours type things, I think we could probably reopen the conversation about, crossing guards and everything like that if the school comes to us and says like, hey, this new crosswalk is now an issue for us or something. But no, I think that's probably the way that I would go as well. So I'll second the motion and let the rest of the council talk.
Councilmember O'Donnell.
Any chance we get IT to fix that? Thank you. Yeah, if I had to pick between these two, Concept A would be the one that I would support, and I'm not going to go against the wishes of the council member that resides in the district. And I think that there's a good, healthy compromise in here. But I did have questions just because. So what's the life expectancy of a speed table or of a raised crosswalk?
The asphalt itself should last until, a scheduled overlay. It's kind of like a speed hump. The way it's installed, it wouldn't be, I guess, eroding or wearing out until.
Do we know when this street is due for the next overlay?
You do not have that information with me.
Do we know by chance?
I think our cycle is 7 years for a rotation of what we would do overlay for. So within a 7-year time frame, we would overlay it and it wouldn't deteriorate in that time frame.
Well, so my question is more of, I don't want to spend 60 grand and then in 6 months be like, oh, hey, we're going to rip it all up.
Oh, no, we'll definitely coordinate. We're doing the same on Kaye or Sinaloa. So yeah, we'll coordinate.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So then that's not an issue. So you had mentioned that speed bumps wouldn't really fit here because of the fire map.
Correct, yes. There's only a small gap that allows for this particular location, but it's not long enough to do 2 speed humps because we like to space them at about 400 or 500 feet, maybe a little more. So that would not allow for it.
And I know we discussed this. This is a question you asked last time because it's a weird gap that's in there. So are they like driving down the street then backing up and leaving?
I think it's more like the access into the community off of Isabella Way, that they have that access, and then they're using the northerly access, basically.
And so from your expert opinion, this would be the best option versus 2 speed humps?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I will trust you. I will support it, and I appreciate all the work that went into this.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. So seeing another discussion, please cast your votes. Motion is approved unanimously. That'll bring us, thank you all for coming tonight, for your input. That'll bring us to our next item regarding the formation of a Wave Water Park Committee. If any members of the public wish to speak on this item, they may indicate so by using the raise their hand feature, by pressing *9, or by submitting a request to speak card. Speakers will be called upon after the presentation. Our Assistant City Manager, Imelda Huerta, will provide the staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of the City Council. Tonight, staff will be providing a presentation on the Wave Water Park Committee for discussion, and with me this evening is our Water Park Manager, Angela Palasic. As a background, at the September 9th City Council meeting, the City Council discussed a request for proposals for the Wave Water Park. The discussion included the water park needs, replacing outdated equipment, reevaluating operational needs after upgrades have been completed, potential RFP items, grant funding opportunities, etc. At this meeting, staff were directed to agendize a discussion item to form a committee for the Wave Water Park. At its regular meeting on September 22nd, the Parks and Recreation Commission discussed the Wave Water Park Committee and reached a consensus to recommend the Parks and Rec Commission as serving as the Wave Water Park Committee with the inclusion of additional stakeholders, such as representative from Vista Unified School District Water Polo, Vista High School, and Rancho Buena Vista High School representatives, students, volunteers, Wave Water Park pass holders, and families who frequently participate in Wave Water Park programs. I would like to note that if the Parks and Recreation Commission served as a Wave Water Park Committee and the Wave Water Park Committee included outside stakeholders, that would be a de facto enlargement of the Parks and Recreation Commission and would not comply with requirements of the municipal code. In order to participate in the Wave Water Park Committee, the Parks and Recreation Commissioners should either apply to be appointed to the Wave Water Park Committee or plan to participate as members of the public during committee meetings. Alternatively, the City Council may consider including aquatic facility experts. Staff have access to subject matter experts who can be engaged as needed and are open to holding a council workshop or meeting to discuss their recommendations. Or the council may designate the Parks and Recreation Commission as a committee while allowing for public participation during its discussions and report back to City Council. Staff have additionally compiled a list of potential stakeholders to be engaged subject to City Council's direction. There is no fiscal impact with this discussion item, as staff are seeking City Council direction regarding the composition of a committee to evaluate the future use and operation of the Wave Water Park. This concludes our presentation, and we are happy to answer any questions.
Deputy Mayor Melendez.
Thank you. Really appreciate staff putting some thoughts behind how we can create a robust committee that's really going to help us address this problem. We have had a couple discussions about this so far. As a council, I think we agree that we want to preserve the Wave Water Park for public benefit and to extend the life of the Wave Water Park. We really need the community's help. We have a great example in the Moonlight Amphitheater. That was really, first of all, spearheaded by the community, the development of that theater, and is very beloved and has a great group of volunteers and donors and just very engaged community members who are part of the Moonlight Cultural Foundation and other adjacent groups that invest in that incredible resource. And as we've had discussions about the Wave and our concerns about whether or not the city has the capacity to maintain the Wave, it's been really clear to us that the community also wants to get involved. So I'm supportive of a lot of the staff recommendations that have come up in this presentation. If we have subject matter experts regarding aquatics and our aquatics facilities, that's going to be really important to me. I think we have to include that expertise, but also the people who use the facilities, right? Not just the people who understand the business of the facilities, but those who benefit from the facilities who might have some really good feedback, right? It's been many, many years since I've been to the Wave personally. I remember enjoying it very much as a kid. And now I know that the Wave is serving the next generation. So how can we get more of those families involved in this discussion? I think getting coaches involved and other stakeholders who really care about the Wave should be also on this committee. I also want to say that the committee is not, in my mind, not necessarily something that we just want to have, without a very clear direction. I really see this group as a task force, and the ultimate task at hand is to support the fiscal feasibility of maintaining this public resource, because that is truly the barrier that the city of Vista is up against right now. How can we afford this aquatic center, lazy river, pools, slides, splash pads, and all the expansions that we hope to do, improving the restrooms, potentially adding better pools and facilities for sports and recreation. So we have a plan. The City of Vista, we have a plan for how we need to schedule repairs. When it comes to the task of a committee or a task force, I would prefer, I think that we need to get some folks on board who can do some fundraising. That's a very important skill to have on a task force like this. and people who are passionate, people who are willing to volunteer, people who are willing to hold fundraiser nights for the Wave, right? Who are willing to go connect with those philanthropists and those donors that we know want to reinvest back into the community. So I see this task force aim very similar to the Moonlight Cultural Foundation, which is helping to us fill the gap and meeting the community's need to provide this public resource. And we cannot do it alone. We are just really stretched beyond our means in terms of this resource. It's a very expensive facility. And so when I said to the community, we're going to keep this in the public, but I'm going to be honest with you, there might be a time where I come back to the community and say, we can't afford it. This is a very expensive facility. It costs a lot of money to maintain all the pumps and the heating elements and everything that makes it nice, right? The resurfacing that's required, the rust, it's not beyond repair. But before we get to that point, we do need to put a task force together to figure out how we're going to sustainably fund the Wave for the next generation and the generation after that, because it is ours and we get to keep it. And I think there are others who would like to also have agency in that discussion. If we were to put this out to maybe a public process and put out an application, there might be folks that us as a council could recommend, reaching out to, our contacts at schools, coaches, those subject matter experts, those amazing volunteers, those enthusiastic fundraisers, right? I'm sure we could put a great group together, but let's really have a diverse group. Let's give them a specific task of, helping us fund the plan to improve the Wave, and of course, putting it out to a public process and really trying to have a far reach and see how many folks can we get involved to help us solve this problem. So that would be my recommendation. There's not a specific motion on that. I'm sure that there's lots of feedback from the council that would also be valuable for staff, but thank you. We've had a couple of discussions about this so far. It takes us many meetings to move things along, but thank you for your persistence. We are getting there, and we are taking the steps necessary in order to maintain this as a public resource. Thanks.
Councilmember Contreras.
Okay, I just have a question about that, because I would see something like the foundation being actually different than a committee, and I think legally there's probably a difference. So I think this is probably a question for you, City Attorney. Can you explain kind of if there is a difference or what parameters we have that we might be bound by for these two different types of committee and then a foundation?
So I am not sure, and I would have to research whether a city-created committee could do private fundraising. So I would have to look into that. So the Moonlight Cultural Foundation was created way back in order to support the building of the amphitheater. And then after it was built, it transitioned into fundraising to support the operations. So I think that's probably where the deputy mayor is going. So in this committee, it would probably be to, for direction on how to move forward. And then I would probably suggest, just for it to be clear, that an outside, association be created if there is a will to do that, to private fundraise, and then donate the money back to the city.
Okay, so the city would not have any involvement on the financial holding of funds to be donated, or no involvement at all with that type of foundation?
Correct. It was so to prevent any ethical or any legal issues. That would probably be the best.
Okay, yeah, just coming off of the downtown committee, I think it was really successful. I think part of the success was that we also gave it seed money so that it could provide really thoughtful analysis of both landscape and design and circulation elements like the traffic analysis, right? I could see, and I'll leave that up to the council to decide whether that's something that we would do. I am in favor of a committee. I don't think that it should be, and it looks like it can't just be the Parks and Rec. I do see our success with the downtown committee, and I would kind of want to structure it that way. And also understanding that you have already thought about potential stakeholders. I could see that one of the recommendations that could potentially come from the committee is a foundation, and maybe they are able to, on the onset of discussion, understand that that's something that the council would love for them to explore. And, you know, that it'll take potentially some work, probably with city attorney and with city manager to help with those discussions. One of the things too, and as I reflect on the downtown committee and why I think it was successful ultimately, is that we had a council liaison. So I really do believe that someone on this council should participate in this committee. It helps facilitate communication between the city, and it helps provide the necessary structure and direction so that there's thoughtful and, I guess, outcomes that can be utilized to a higher extent. So I thought that that was a critical component. So those are my thoughts for right now, but I am completely supportive, and I would love to see, I don't think that we need to even make a decision on this today. I think that we have certain questions that we might want to flesh out a little bit more, but I definitely think that within the next few months, we could solidify moving forward with the committee. That would be my desire. And the next time that it comes to discussion, I would love to see some of the recommendations. You know, if there's a majority on the council that wants to move in that direction, I think it would be really good to see some of the staff recommendations come forward as well. Thank you. And thank you, Deputy Mayor Melendez. I think you were one of the ones that, you were the one who wanted to look at a committee. So I'm thankful that we're having this discussion.
Councilmember Fox.
Perfect. All right. Well, yeah, and I think this has been something where we've had a lot of discussions up here about the wave, and they're always fun. You know, a lot of community involvement on these. There's a lot of people that care a lot about this facility. So, which you know, as a member of this council and as a member of the community, makes me feel very, very strongly that we need to make sure that we take good care of it. So, I mean, I think we're pretty clear on some of the questions that, you know, that we've had up here on things like, you know, abilities for additional hours, seasons, staffing, the amenities we could provide, you know, funding options, a foundation, additional revenue sources, marketing strategy. There's been a lot of things that we've kind of come up with as things that, you know, I think are the more businessy, revenue-y kind of side that typically are, you know, questions from a for-profit kind of side, which is typically not what, you know, cities are set up to do. And so, I mean, I think some sort of committee would be in order here. I will say that we just, you know, with the Parks Master Plan, I mean, we did a lot of survey work on, you know, what the community was looking for, what their preferences is, like what the key parts of the facility are, their favorite parts, the things that they want us to keep, things that they were interested in. We've also had, you know, a good amount of public speakers on this item as well. So people like our water polo teams, swim teams from the different schools. So and there's been a lot of council direction, I think, on this item as well. So I think we have a pretty clear picture of kind of where everyone stands on the wave and what we're looking to do. And now we just have to figure out, you know, a way to do that, right? And so to me, when I was looking through similar projects we've done in the past and, you know, different organizations that are available to do that, I found, you know, in our economic development strategy, an organization, a technical advisory committee, where it's a team of, we put together a team of experts in the industry to answer very specific questions about something that is not necessarily something that is very common public knowledge, which I don't think, I would consider running a water park probably is not common public knowledge on how to do that and how to achieve some of these different goals that, we have set. And so it kind of sounds like the perfect solution for this issue is some sort of, is more of a technical advisory committee, for this at least. Now, whether that works directly with council, there's a council member that works with it. I'm not even sure if you can have a council member on a technical advisory committee, or if that's all of a sudden, maybe, okay, there's not. We're nodding, cool, that's great. But that would be something that I would kind of lean towards. We could also potentially have them, I don't know if this is something we can do as well, but I'd be curious if we could have them work with our Parks and Recs Commission, report to them, have them, do those kinds of findings, and we're getting some no shakes. Is that, we can't have them report to the Parks Commission?
So not directly, because the commission is a subset of the council, and then the committee would be a subset of the council. So they would have to somehow, everything flow through the council to some degree. So
they would have to report to us, then we could ask our commission to potentially review things and, use that as a way to get their input, their feedback as, our representatives from the community to us. Okay. Okay. On the committee as well. Okay. Well, those are kind of my thoughts at this point. The foundation, I did have one question on that, is because it has to be an independent organization, do we have any possibility of having us or our committee pick any appointments or anything for something like that? Or because it's independent, we have to stand very far back from it?
No, you can make the appointments. I don't see a problem with it.
To like a WAVE foundation that raises money?
Oh, for a foundation that raises money? No.
Yeah, that was
no.
That was my guess. And even a committee we put together would not be able to do that as well, right? Okay. That was just more of that was my feeling on it, just from, business stuff that I've worked on, but I was like, conflicts of interest and all that. So, okay. I think that's all from me for now, but I'd love to hear what the council thinks about that and get any feedback. Thanks.
I'm going to jump in with some thoughts. I don't really understand the committee structure with regard to this. I'm thinking maybe it should be listening sessions. Maybe we have a workshop meeting, or maybe we have some community listening sessions where the WAVE is the topic on the agenda, and where staff walks through, I don't even know. I'd have to see an agenda for what the areas of discussion are. But in terms of involving stakeholders, I think if we have some public meetings of the council that are focused on this, I don't know if it's 2 or 3, we could hear the feedback of the public and invite all of the stakeholders and everybody that's relevant to have a voice in that process. I'm always a little leery of creating a new committee because there's an implied delegation of authority to a committee, and there's the implication that those individuals who have donated their time generously and come to a conclusion, that whatever conclusion that they've achieved, there's sort of almost an inherent bias to wanting to adopt that. And it may or may not be what the council thinks is the best thing for the future of the WAVE. So I think it'd be better for us to have an open community forum to develop suggestions where we walk through. I think we need to define what the problems are that we have to solve at the WAVE, what improvements need to be made. Are we going to change the rides or programming? We should come up with a list, and I would suggest that staff should develop that list of subject matter to be discussed. I think we kind of know. We could certainly have a brainstorming discussion about what those problems are that need to be solved, but there's I'm not seeing a really defined description of the problems that this committee would solve. The future of the WAVE is such a open-ended and big thing that I just think that a question that big belongs only to the council. So that's where I'm at on it. Councilmember O'Donnell.
Have we done any further reach out to subject matter experts on this type of business or business model?
No, we have reached out to subject matter experts for certain maintenance needs, but not necessarily for this process. We wanted to wait pending this discussion.
All right, so this is where I'm at, because I feel like we're going to run out of residents in Vista for all the committees and commissions that we keep creating. I would like us to reach out to businesses that actually operate these type of facilities to find out if they would be willing to offer advice or to review what we're currently doing and what they would do differently to see how we might be able to generate revenue, at minimum to become net neutral, or at bare minimum to just not hemorrhage money like we do. I'm not against a committee on it. I'd rather go that route first, just so we can have them craft what the committee can discuss. Then we can take it back to the community. I mean, if we want to have community discussions, I'm willing, and I would hope the entire council would be willing to host a town hall in their districts. And that way we can take these ideas out into the community and have people join us and have those discussions. But that's where I'm at. I don't know if we should necessarily form a committee just quite yet until we can get a foundation and basis from organizations or businesses that actually operate these things. And that way, then we can take community feedback and stakeholder feedback and all of those things and kind of parse it into that and have a better idea, because I love the idea of keeping the community and the stakeholders involved. But I also worry about a conflict of interest of who's going to want what when it comes to trying to get those things out of a committee to bring forward to us. So that's where I'm at on it. Obviously, we'll see what the rest of the council wants to do, but I would rather go that route first and then come back and discuss the merits of a committee. But we'll see what you all have to say.
I'm just going to underline something you said because I meant to say it, but I appreciate you brought it up. The sort of conflict, some of the individuals that were listed as potential stakeholders had some very specific, and I'm not going to call it self-interested, let's just say they had some very specific ideas for the future of the wave that would have best suited their own interests. And that's where I have a little bit of a concern. So you kind of touched on that, but I think that's important to underline. Councilmember Contreras.
Okay, so Councilmember Fox, I like the idea of a technical advisory committee, but I still think that there should be a council liaison, and I think that there should be a liaison from the Parks and Rec Commission on it as well. And what I'm hearing is that we want help with developing kind of high-level agendas, which you could call work plans. That's something that I was involved in with the downtown committee, and I kind of, did some preliminary work planning, then got with city manager and staff, and they took my, initial ideas and made a really great work plan that exceeded what I could have done at that time. So what I would think may garner a lot of council support is that for council to have the ability to look at a high-level work plan for this committee, for potentially like a 6-month committee. And we could certainly, Councilmember O'Donnell, have, and I think we should, reach out to technical experts that could help formulate this work plan, but we also have some of that expertise in-house, right? So I could see, Angela being really involved with that as well. I mean, how long have you been with the Wave?
17 years.
Yeah, so 17 years of knowledge with the Wave, pre-COVID and after COVID and during COVID. I mean, she has an incredible amount of expertise, and I would really, I would lean on her knowledge to even develop, along with city manager's office, a high, and Parks and Rec, a high-level agenda work plan for like maybe a 6-month committee. Or if it needs to be less than that, it can be less than that. If it needs to be more than that, it can be more. I think that's the flexibility that we can provide. and that item would come back to council for us to review, that potential work plan. And if we think, hey, you know what, this seems like a good idea, then we could move forward at that time. But I think it would be really helpful for us to kind of see the direction that this committee could go, and setting some parameters. Just, when it comes to a committee, people are donating their time to the city. And I saw that with the downtown committee, and I made a commitment to them, like, hey, I know you could be with your family right now, but you decided to be here and donating your time and expertise, and I don't want to let you down, and we're going to have something come out of it. And so everybody was game for that. And I just really think that we could have kind of a similar thing, but having that work plan early on at the beginning of the committee's discussions was really fruitful. And then, the committee would already have that work plan in hand, and that could also help, for folks to see, like, oh, I do want to be part of this because I see that this work plan has, something that I can contribute to. And versus, if the work plan doesn't really jive with someone, they could be like, oh, I don't think I really fit into this committee. So anyways, those are some of my thoughts, but I would love to see a high-level work plan come back to council for review. Thanks.
Councilmember Fox.
Yeah, so I think what I was talking about, I think, is a little bit less formal than I think a lot of the other committees we've had in the past. So the example that I was using out of the VEDS was we had a film advisory committee at one point, which I may have accidentally been a part of without knowing it, because really what it is a group of people from the industry who can answer very specific questions about that just the community wouldn't necessarily know about, like, how to set up a foundation for, to raise money for this, or which type of amenities are going to be revenue positive, and, how to increase our staff levels to a point where we can extend our season in hours and things like that. So it's very specific questions. So if we don't, it's more take the direction, and Mayor, it's what I was thinking was more of, rather than delegating the duty to them of asking what the questions are that we want them to, where they're telling us how to, distributing our control to them. It was more of, we give direction on what kind of things we want them to work on, and then they are more of figure out how to do it. And so with that, I think what we really need is it to be very expert focused, right? And people that can work directly with our staff, and give that advice on, taking our council direction and turning it into actionable. We can tell them we'd like to extend the hours and the seasons as much as we want, and the committee could say that as well. And then at the end of the day, we still need to figure out how to do it. And so that's kind of where I'm kind of coming from on this item. So just to clarify a little bit, but I have those kind of 5 things that, I wrote down just as off the top of my head, things that I've heard from our council, in the past. And maybe that's a conversation we can have now, or maybe it's a conversation that staff can put together, what they've heard direction-wise from council over the last couple meetings we've had on the wave, and see if we all agree on that, and then, find some experts to answer those very specific questions that we have, the comments, the direction that we've given already, and how to actually implement some of that stuff. So hopefully that clarifies a little bit, and I'd love to hear, how everyone feels about that one.
Councilmember O'Donnell.
Angela, first off, I apologize. In no way was I trying to say you're not a subject matter expert. I was just simply saying we should bring in some outside people as well, just because sometimes new eyes and new set of vision is good to have on something, because even in the industry I work in, sometimes you get blind to the things that are obviously right there because you look at them every day. I actually think that there's a hybrid that we can work on between both of what you're suggesting, which is why I believe that if we can bring people in, we can bring a work plan forward. And we can also keep it to where it is subject matter experts or experts in the field that can craft a plan or craft some type of work plan together. And that way we can move towards that vision, work with the committee to create the ideas that can fold into this plan, and then come up with solid solutions moving forward. The entire thing that hinges on that is making sure that there are individuals out there that are willing to work with us to create and formulate a work plan. So what I would like to direct staff to do is reach out to those individuals and see if we can get people to give us suggestions and work with our staff and the people at the Wave, so that way we can try and formulate a work plan. And if at that point we cannot get those individuals, then I think we need to have this discussion again and figure out what we want to do and how we're going to do it.
Deputy Mayor Melendez.
Thank you, Council. I really appreciate everyone putting their minds together on this. And I really agree with where the conversation is going. I appreciate your comments, Councilmember Fox, about getting people together to help us execute our plan, because we do have a plan a little bit different than the AVO committee. The AVO committee, we really hadn't done as many council discussions up until that point, and it was very, the first phases of that committee were executed by the committee, right? But we have already spent a bit of money on a plan, and so getting the community together to help us identify where are the philanthropic opportunities, not that we would be doing that ourselves, of course, but also really love being able to bring in local business owners. We have a lot of aquatic related businesses and pool related businesses I imagine would be open to that discussion. And we could, one of the things I'm not really too concerned about, and I've heard it kind of amongst the council in general, is that different people with different interests might try to influence this discussion. Everybody has their own influences, right? Everybody has their point of view, and that's okay, right? We can filter through those discussions, right? But I think the direction that we would want to give starts with the planning we've already done and continues with a great selection of folks who can help us execute that plan. I agree, Councilmember O'Donnell, it will really depend on the people in the room. So I think the next step and the next direction for staff should be that we go out and seek some of those participants. We do kind of preliminary, inquiry to folks in the community who we have identified as being helpful in this discussion, and we bring them in. And let's say we really only get enthusiastic and engaged members of the community who are involved in youth sports, right? If that's that limited viewpoint, then we might have to have kind of specific instructions for that committee. So I think we can continue to evolve that instruction for them. And perhaps as we get this going and get it public, we might see people step in that we didn't expect to step in. So I definitely don't want to prohibit anybody. I want to make sure we're completely legally compliant. But I like the idea of putting together a group that's going to help us execute some of the planning we've already done.
Councilmember Contreras.
I thought I was going to be slick and, right before you're finishing pressing the button, but apparently I didn't press it. Okay, so am I hearing consensus for just even a high-level work plan that our staff could show us as an example? Is there council consensus for that? Yeah, I'm seeing yes. Okay, perfect. So just to make sure we give clear direction. The other thing is, I know that we discussed that we wanted to have morning swims throughout the year. Can you give me an update on that? And I swear it's connected.
Yeah, we're pulling our staff right now and trying to figure out which type of staff that we would have. We are planning to do some construction starting in January. So our thought was we don't want to launch it and then take it away right away. So our plan is to kind of launch it with next summer after all the plans are the construction this January through March, April-ish time.
Okay. Okay, I don't think that may or may not work with the timeline that we're trying to do, but I was curious if we could, even have some kind of a QR code at the Wave to solicit, feedback and whatnot. I think we could even put that in the city newsletter magazine that we send out, right? And maybe some folks who want to participate that have some additional expertise might reach out to the city that way. And I do like this idea of aquatic businesses and doing outreach to them as well. And it could be as simple as sending them or dropping off, that QR code or emailing it to them, or however we want to get it to them so that it's not, such a big lift for staff. But I think that we should, start soliciting opinions from and direction too from, our residents here in Vista. And I don't know what that looks like right now. I don't know, what kind of feedback we would want to ask, because you probably want to craft something, and maybe that's something staff can look at, like what would work, instead of just having like a giant open question, like, how do you want to save the wave? So I think putting some work into formulating that question would be helpful. But outside of that, I think that we're moving forward in a good direction. This is a very critical public asset, and we want it to stay that way, and it needs to stay that way. Not a lot of people have access to pool space, and we want to make sure that we have something that's accessible both for our youth and for our seniors and everybody in between. Accessible because we have it open more, and accessible because the price point is such that folks can afford it. So thank you again for all the hard work that's gone into our discussions of the wave. And thank you to the public for being so focused on ensuring that the wave continues to be in the public domain. Thank you.
So just to recap what I'm hearing, I'm seeing consensus for maybe giving some initial definition to the questions that we want to ask and answer. Obviously, when you begin asking questions, other questions come to mind. And I'm sure that's going to be part of the process. But it's kind of hard without having a list of the questions, even the high-level questions that we want to ask and answer, other than just this general idea of the future of the wave. And I think, repeating what's been said at previous meetings, I think we all want to ensure the future of the wave for generations to come, make sure we have access for our student athletes and for our seniors, and that it's affordable for Vista families. So those are things we want to accomplish. But I think we need a list of far more specific questions that we want to answer. I don't know that that's necessarily, we need technical experts to synthesize those questions. I would think some thought by staff, maybe an internal committee of our Parks and Rec folks and city manager and assistant city manager and our WAVE director could sit and just think about what are the questions that we think we should answer now and in the future. What are the short-term problems and questions? What are the long-term challenges that we face? If we start to give some definition to those problems, then I think it would shape and guide, help us as a council decide whether, exactly what we want this committee to be, or whether we want it to be listening sessions or whatever it's going to be. But knowing what the questions are, I think, would be essential to knowing who we want to answer those questions. Councilmember Fox?
I think this will be my last time. One other group that I don't think we've really talked about tonight, but I want to also bring up, would be reaching out to operators of other water parks and successful places that are, that are already doing this successfully, and seeing if they're willing to give us any advice as well. So, places like the Great Wolf Lodge and all those kinds of places up in Orange County, places where they've already implemented a lot of the things that we're trying to do, and may be willing to speak with us about that. So I wouldn't want to limit it just to local residents. I'd want to ask experts at basically anywhere where they're willing to help us and give us some good information. So I just wanted to bring that up. I do have those points written down if anyone's curious about, the thing, if anyone wants me to repeat them, but I think I agree with the mayor that staff can probably has probably a pretty good idea of, based off of the direction we've given in the past, what kind of questions they'd want to ask to help implement some of those things. So I'm happy with leaving it to you guys on that one. So thanks.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I wanted to add just a quick note of consensus from me that I do support having staff, especially Angela, you've been great on this process, right? Getting our in-house subject matter experts plugged in with the committee, I think would be an important way to model the committee. But also in regards to the mayor's questions about how we present our queries to the committee, I just wrote down right now 3 top questions that came to my mind. So if this is a benefit to staff, I'll share these. How should we model our tickets and packages in order to ensure affordable access to Vista residents? And I'm very interested in the packages idea, okay? Especially if we get into like a little bit of a cabana setup, all right? I've got ideas for Wave After Dark, okay? Which amenities are highly valuable to the community, and how can we ensure their continued operation? And also, where and how should we expand the footprint of the facility? Of course, those are questions that I think come after a lot of the plans that we've already established. We've kind of answered some of these questions. The future of the Wave, we've done some planning for that. And it would be really great for the committee to have a merge with what the council has done, and then they can come back to us with our brainchild, and I'm sure it will be brilliant. So with staff involved as well. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other requests to speak on this item, we'll conclude item D2, and we'll move to item D3, our fiscal year 2024, and thank you very much, staff, for your work on that. Our fiscal year 2024-2025 fourth quarter financial report. If there are any members of the public wish to speak on this item, they may indicate so by using the raise their hand feature by pressing *9 or submitting a request to speak card. Speakers will be called upon after the presentation, and we do have at least one speaker. Our Finance Director, Mike Sylvia, will introduce the item.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Item D3 is the city's fiscal year 24-25 fourth quarter financial and cannabis tax revenue report. It provides a summary and comparison of the general fund budget to actuals for the current and prior fiscal years ending June 30th, noting that the current year audit is not yet completed. The audit and the annual comprehensive financial report are scheduled to be completed by mid-December with a presentation to council on February 10th. And so the net results for fiscal year 24-25 in terms of general fund activity yields a $9.7 million year-end fund balance. This surplus is composed of both actual revenues over budget and actual expenditures under budget. Let me break that down a little bit. Approximately 55% or $5.3 million of that year-end fund balance is from revenues exceeding budgeted amounts, and that's led this year by charges for services. A little bit unusual. Normally, our larger revenues of property tax and sales tax will lead. This year, we were pretty close of actuals to budget. But anyway, going back to charges for services, that was $2.3 million over budget and represents about 23.5% of the year-end fund balance total. Of this figure, its largest contributors were fire charges, which were almost $1.2 million over budget, or 12% of the total. Engineering charges at $700,000 over budget, or 7% of the total. Building charges at $309,000 over budget, which is 3% of the total. Investment earnings exceeded budget by 1.9%, and that represented nearly 20% of the total. Staff did increase investment earnings budget by more than $1 million with the Q2 report in March. Also, fines and TOT taxes for both hotel and short-term rentals contributed $330,000 and $293,000, both around 3% to that total. Additional revenue details can be found in Exhibit 2 on page 10 and 11 of the agenda report. So on the other side of the ledger, 45% of the $9.7 million year-end fund balance total was for expenditures, and more than 25% of the total, or just over half of this half, or nearly half, was salary savings and vacant positions. Another 20% was due to professional services and other operating expenses coming in under budget. Additional expenditure details can be found on Exhibit 4, page 14 of the agenda report, and you can see on the table on the bottom of this slide that the results are fairly consistent with recent years' figures on a percentage basis. And so this year, in an effort to streamline the recommended uses for the year-end fund balance, staff has split the list into 3 groups. Group 1 is comprised of City Council policy adherence and prior direction from City Council, with the largest allocation shown here at $3.1 million to the general fund emergency reserves. That $3.1 million gets the city back to 32.5%, which is the midpoint of the operating range that Council had set up as a part of the City Council Policy 200-19. The other large amount of $615,000 is for 3 Park and Rec items, mainly the $360,000 annual maintenance amount recommended for the wave during the August 2025 presentation by Aquatic Design Group, and $250,000 for park restroom upgrades per City Council direction in October 2024. The second group is staff requests, and that totals $590,000. These recommendations represent 3 City Council goals. The first, the largest being Parks and Rec, and that's $370,000 of this total. That includes replacement of the wave pool heater for $170,000, and I've been told it's expected to be far more energy efficient than the one that I think is 30 years old, so that's a good thing. The other large component for that was $125,000 for the 2026 Moonlight season, the development and distribution of the marketing materials, as well as 2 senior center related items, $60,000 for senior center meals and $15,000 for senior center transportation in the form of an electric golf cart. Public safety's got a total here for $200,000, and that's comprised of 2 components, $140,000 for wildfire training exercise resources and $60,000 for thermal imaging cameras. The last is pretty small, but I think is pretty important for financial responsibility for $20,000. We want to do pension funding analysis. We had this scheduled for an every 5-year iteration. We had last done it in 2022. I spoke to the city manager because we have had very solid returns with our Section 115 trust, and so we want to do an analysis about a year early to optimize the surplus funds that in today's dollars are probably pretty close to $4 million over the 1.5-year CalPERS all-in cost that we have. So that's that piece. Group 3. This is comprised of the current City Council member requests, and there are 6 requests under the Park and Recreation goal, which total $1.83 million. The primary components of this sum are $1 million for Luz Duran Park Community Center, $500,000 for wave facility remodel, and that includes the restrooms, the shower areas, and the changing rooms, $105,000 for shade sales at the senior center, on a couple of other smaller items. The traffic goal is the second largest here and has 2 proposed items, $1 million for a traffic calming reserve and $265,000 for sidewalk projects. Public safety has 2 projects totaling $850,000, $500,000 for a solar streetlight reserve and $350,000 for stormwater maintenance. Tied for 4th largest are homelessness and housing, $500,000 for senior housing subsidy, and fiscal responsibility, $500,000 for emergency reserves in addition to the amount per the policy. That would bring the percentage of general fund expenditure coverage almost to 33%. It would be 32.9, or in nominal dollars, almost $40.3 million. Details of the recommendations from all 3 groups are shown on Exhibit 9, pages 21 and 22 of the agenda report. City Council Policy 200-21 provides direction to staff on the utilization of the city's cannabis revenue. For fiscal 24-25, the city received $5.2 million in cannabis revenue, which is down from about $6.5 million in the prior year. Per the components of the policy, 65% of the revenues are to be used as general revenues within the general fund with a minimum of $4.46 million. And because the revenues were short of truly using that 65%, it would require cannabis revenue of almost $6.9 million. The minimum in the policy of 4.46 is utilized for that component. The remaining total of 1.3 million is divided between the other two components of the policy, with 15% allocation to scholarships. That totals $581,000, and 80% of that, or $465,000, to extracurricular activities, and 20%, or $116,000, for academics, with staff costs to be netted against those figures. The remaining 20% allocation is to go to city council designated one-time projects. That total is $775,000, and we've got the recommended list on the next page. As you can see, the two scholarship amounts, along with the one $200,000 recommended project for bus shelters, is shown. However, there weren't sufficient city council requested projects for the remaining $575,000 per the policy. And so staff's making a recommendation to utilize that remainder of $575,000 as an allocation to the extracurricular scholarship program, which has been wildly popular and I would say is sufficiently underfunded compared to prior years. Last year, the total per the policy was $710,000, and we had an additional allocation on top of that because of demand. And so staff's recommendation for this item is to receive and file the fiscal year 24-25 fourth quarter financial report and adopt the resolution for the city amending the operating budget for fiscal years 25-26 and 26-27, as well as the capital projects budget for fiscal years 24-25 and 25-26. This concludes staff's presentation. Staff is available for discussion and questions.
Thank you very much. And we have one public speaker on this item, Sid Rothenberg.
Good evening. I'm here to talk about seniors. Big surprise. Yes, there are 3 items listed on the budget. The first one I want to talk about is the patio shade covers. This is the 3rd year of requests, so I hope that it will happen. And it's listed at $105,000, but I have reason to believe it's going to cost more than that based on some conversations I have had in years past. But it's a start, and I welcome it happening, so hoping that's going to pass. The nutrition program at $60,000. We are already expanding above the county granted allotment per month, every month. So I think that's because our programming is improving, and maybe there's more need in our community for meals. So I certainly expect that you would pass that, but I do believe that we're going to see more and more of this, and there has been floated in the past week in the senior center adding weekends meals for people that are in need or have lost their SNAP money. We all have heard about that, right? So if there's any way that, the 60,000, you consider what that might cover, if there's any way to advance that, along with the patio covers. So the third thing is the golf cart that's been touted as available and in the budget for 3 years as well, but it's been waiting principally for the outlet to plug it into. So I hope that It's needed. There's hills, as most of you know, to try to get from our parking lots into the entrance of the building. And we have a lot of frail seniors that can't make that hike. And so looking forward to seeing that happen this year. I do support the Luce Durand allotment and maybe think in the future of using that as a community and senior center satellite building and kind of sharing that function with that community so we can expand our programs in Spanish speaking. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll close the opportunity for public comment on this item. And I want to start with a motion that we move $400,000 away from the $1 million traffic calming suggested reserve and $200,000 away from the additional cannabis amount that was suggested by staff for the extracurricular activities, for a total of $600,000 to be invested in a law enforcement personnel reserve account to ensure funding of both identified and unidentified law enforcement personnel needs as determined by our city manager in consultation with our sheriff's captain. I'd like to offer that motion. Councilmember O'Donnell.
Great minds think alike. However, I don't know if I'm at 600,000 for that, but I did not put any requests in for this budget. So one of the things that I have on here is also a public works maintenance reserve for facilities throughout the city, because every single year I feel like we're coming up against a bridge of maintenance that is needed. So, I mean, city manager, actually, I would ask you, is that something that we foresee would be recommended or necessary moving forward?
There we go. Yeah, I believe a reserve for maintenance is perfectly acceptable. If
Okay.
that's what council wants to do.
I'm not sure where from, perhaps 400,000 into a, how did you word that, Mayor?
A law enforcement personnel reserve account to ensure funding of identified and unidentified law enforcement needs as determined by the city manager in consultation with the sheriff's captain.
Okay, so the one thing I would just want to make sure is that we're not paying for a deputy out of one-time funding. So obviously it's a reserve, but my thought process wasn't so much as hiring a law enforcement deputy with it, but as technology advances and there is funding resources and needs in the community. So I mean, I know that we haven't voted on it yet, but when you talk about like LPRs or other technology that's going to be utilized by law enforcement to ensure that we have some type of reserve for those things is what I was thinking. But also, do we still have a deputy in the funding for cannabis funds?
Yes.
So one of the questions I wrote down, because you said it went from 6.5 down to 5.2 million?
5.8.
5.8, okay. How many ongoing expenditures do we have? And I know that you answered this, but what's the value of the ongoing expenditures that we have in the cannabis funds?
As recognized in the policy, it's the 466,000. That number's a bit bigger now because it hasn't been compounded. As those expenses have compounded, it hasn't compounded with, for example, the cost of a deputy, the cost of park rangers, that kind of thing. But that's the allocation as originally contemplated as staff understands it from council.
So I guess my question would be, since we're looking at a 9 million plus year-end fund balance, would it make sense to now move that into a general fund obligation versus leaving it in the cannabis funds?
Cannabis funds are general fund revenue. They're just earmarked slightly different. Maybe I'm not understanding the question.
So cannabis funds, as they continue to go down, right? So there's an expected, I would expect that they continue to go down because they've seemed to have gone down year over year. And so as those resources get depleted and we have ongoing expenditures that are not one-time offsets, does it make sense to move the ongoing expenditures into the general balance versus the funding that may not be there for the future?
I see what you're saying. Yes, that could certainly be done. I would say, our first quarter report's coming in December, but we already have numbers for the first quarter of the current fiscal year. And if we annualize that quarter, We're just under 5.5 million, and our budget is 5.5 million for this year, just as a point of reference.
Okay. So not tonight, but I would like to see just in the future, maybe sit down and have a conversation with you to see if that's something we can do. Because I do have this sneaking suspicion that as other cities adopt their own cannabis policies, and as the tax rates get lowered and all the other things, we're going to see a decrease in revenue in these businesses. And so just having that conversation now before it's too late, yeah, I think is an important one. Okay, so I would say this. I don't know if I want to remove, Mayor, how much did you say you wanted to take away from the extracurricular surplus funds?
200,000, which would still leave us, I think, almost, it was $875,000 for the extracurricular scholarships in total.
Yes, it was almost 1.2 million, so you were going to pull 200, yeah, 800 to 900,000.
But you had said that that is in need of funding?
Yes, I mean, I don't have what the additional allocation was last year. Like I said, per the policy last year, it was 710,000, but I want to say 2 years ago, it was well over $1 million. It was probably 1.1, 1.2 million, and we've used all of those funds to the best of my knowledge.
So I don't know if I'd be willing to take the money away from that particular portion. I'm willing to have the conversation about other areas that we might be able to take it from, or shuffle it around. The 500,000 that we're thinking about putting into the reserve, you said we'd be at 32.5, which would be in the middle of our sliding scale of between 30 and 35% if we, with the current funds that we're putting in, not with the additional 500,000.
The 3.1 gets us to 32.5, right at the middle of the operating range.
Okay.
I pulled up the current city council list. That's the largest of the three lists.
Okay. I'm going to listen to what the rest of the council has to say. I'm going to look over this and just see what other areas there might be. I know with the 500,000, we could probably get pretty close to, if we're going to build 2 other reserves out of that 500,000, and we're going to keep ourselves at 32.5%. I think that that's a very feasible idea and option that we could have, but I'd like to hear from the rest of the council on it, and then I will give my comments after that.
Councilmember Contreras.
I'm totally okay with an officer reserve, fine with doing that. I am not okay with moving any funding from our scholarships. We have seen our crime rate go down, and it's not just because of law enforcement, it's because our holistic approach to our community to ensure that people that need access to extracurricular activities have the ability to access that. And it being very popular, I would be extremely, extremely concerned that we would remove any funding from that. So I do not support that. If you want to take it from traffic calming, that's fine. But I also would want that decision to not be made by a city manager or anybody internally or externally. That is the decision that should be made by the council as to who and how many folks we should hire. So I am in favor of the officer reserve. I think everything else is amazing. I completely agree with the public comment regarding the Linda Road or the Luz Duran Community Center. This conversation that I was able to have with Sid, in a conversation I've had with a lot of folks that live around the Luz Duran Park, that they want a community center. There's a huge need for senior population in District 1 to have access to different activities, food, that kind of stuff. And it's just really burdensome. It's very hard for folks to get over to where the current senior center is. So I do think that we should start moving in the direction of building a new facility there, expanding the footprint of the current facility, having the ability to have senior programming, to have also intergenerational programming. I think it's really important for our youth to be able to access that space. I think it's a great space for food distribution, being able to have some refrigeration there where we can distribute food to folks who really need it, want it, and use it. So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't, as much as the Public Works Maintenance Reserve, I do support that idea. However, I feel like that's potentially something that we can look at when we're building our next budget, because I'm just not sure where I would want to move some funds, because I think everything's allocated in a very good way.
So after hearing from Councilmember O'Donnell, I'll amend my motion to take $400,000 from the traffic calming fund and $200,000 from the additional $500,000 amount for general fund emergency reserve contribution, reducing that number from 500,000 to 300,000. So I'll make that my motion that stands now. Councilmember Fox.
That was one where I hit it, and I wasn't sure if I hit it, so I was not sure. That was a scary one right there. Okay, I was like, I'm gonna sit here for 20 seconds. I swear. About how much would we have to add to the scholarship program to match the extracurricular and the academic from last year? Obviously that was a really impactful program, and I wouldn't want that to shrink year over year. So I want to make sure that we're adequate there for both of those.
Mike, if you want, I can address that. We spent about $913,000 last year.
Okay, between both programs together?
Correct.
Okay, and this puts us pretty close to that. Cool.
This is at 1.1 million, right?
So even maybe a little expansion.
Yeah, about 1.1 million.
Cool. I love
You're
that.
close to it.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, cool. That's fantastic.
1.15.
I liked the idea of potentially having, weekend like a weekend meals at the senior center and seeing what that would cost. I noticed we did have a food distribution piece in here, and I was wondering if there's already organizations in mind for that, or if that could be something we could work with our senior center and have them, use some of that to pilot a weekend program. Is that possible? Okay. There's no it's not tied up with anything in particular.
No.
Okay. Cool. Well, I mean, that sounds good to me. Do we have any estimates on what our typical traffic calming budget is on a yearly basis?
I
don't know if Mr. Hassanen is still here. No, okay. So I think we were spending around $500,000 a year the last year and a half, 2 years on speed humps primarily and stop signs. There were a few larger scale projects that we didn't take out of that account that were neighborhood traffic calming. That money was primarily used for speed humps.
Okay. And if a project like that came up, would we still have the ability to find it somewhere? I just want to make sure that we're allocating everything correctly here, but if we allocate a certain amount and we split it between our new traffic calming policy requires us to kind of allocate on a rolling period to two kind of tranches of funding for the first 6 months and the second 6 months. And so in this, if we end up with, if we have the $1 million in here, if we do transfer 400,000 out, that gives us 600,000. Can we split that into 2 6-month rolling periods? And
I think with the current application load that we have, we should be okay. But if we need additional money, we'd be coming back and looking for that and probably a quarterly report, financial report.
And would that be something that we think would be achievable?
At this point, it seems like it would be achievable, but depending on the gap, I mean, I don't see it as being a huge issue right now.
Okay. Would it be helpful for us to say allocate 200,000 per 6-month rolling period and then have 200,000 for those type of projects or something? Would that be?
Council can allocate whatever amount of money they want for those rolling periods. Yep.
Okay. Well, it's just something to talk about. I have no direct, allocation split in mind, but if with 600,000, we might want to this is probably the time where we need to discuss that, I'm guessing, is how much to put into each of those 6-month rolling periods. Is that, and just do
We
down the
can
middle.
bring that issue back once we have the first tranche of speed hump applications ready. We're still a few months out.
Okay. Well, I mean, for now, I think, splitting it down the middle sounds like a totally reasonable, whatever our traffic calming budget here ends up at, we can kind of go from there, I guess. Yeah, I think the Luz Duran Park thing's great. Again, I just want to bring up that park survey we just had, that putting money into our existing parks was by far number one on the list of how they would spend, if they had $100, how they would spend it. I think it was like $36, and the next highest was like 24 or something. So it was a pretty good amount above the next highest, so that sounds great. On the downtown committee, no, not that, yeah, that one, I wanted to make sure that 100,000 would be adequate to do a design phase or something. If we had they put all that work into that, and I want to make sure that we can actually get it moving with that. Is that adequate?
So if you're asking adequate to
Build the whole thing, no, just kidding. Like,
adequate to initiate, the initial civil design work that needs to be done. We're thinking that the full package will maybe cost a little more, but it'll get us initial conceptual design work, and then we'll come back to council.
with a more defined what the budget will be kind of thing.
Correct.
Okay, cool. Love that. And then the other one that I was trying to say and then accidentally said the committee was the special events fund. I would love to see a little bit of this get allocated by our CVBID, because they, I think when we're talking about doing the different downtown events, we already have an organization that kind of does all the allocations there. And whether we keep some in reserves for city council approval projects that we want to go outside of the recommendations from CVBID, I wouldn't be against that. But as someone who currently pays into CVBID with my business, I mean, I think having some city skin in the game there, where we're matching some funds of what the businesses are putting in to throw those events, would feel good to me, and I think it would feel good to a lot of the other CVBID paying businesses out there. So, and of course, I think our budget's somewhere in the 50,000 range for CVBID, which we have a board of a bunch of local business owners and things like that, and having them meet up multiple times a year and then run out of their money halfway through is not a great use of their time. So I would recommend having some of that go over to them to allocate. And that was all of my notes.
So are you supportive of the concept of moving the $400,000 from traffic calming and the $200,000 from the additional $500,000 reserve amount?
Yeah, I'm amenable to that. I would also, I would recommend, I would like to see more in the general fund emergency if possible, just because, we had kind of a tight, conservative estimates of our budget this year, and based on what we think of next year, I'd rather be higher in that 30 to 35% range going into a year with a lot of uncertainty than lower in that range. So if we can find it from somewhere else, I'd be even more supportive of it. But if that's where it has to come from, I'd be supportive of that as well.
You have any other, well, take a look and see if you have any other thoughts about where it might come from.
I'll take a look, and if anyone else has any recommendations in the meantime.
Deputy Mayor Melendez.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to say thank you to staff. This is always a big undertaking when we have any type of budget review. But I'm really excited about this surplus. I never want to hear that this council is damaging our city's fiscal health. We are really clear on our priorities, and we are putting Vista first in a way that you're not seeing in other cities. Oh my gosh, not to brag, but other cities may be dealing with massive deficits and just really kind of a lot of heartbreak where their taxpayers are very disappointed. But here, our local tax dollars are being able to go back into the community in a very transparent way. And thank you, Sid, for being our lone speaker tonight. I would have hoped that with such an amazing surplus, we would have gotten more community participation. But I got some really great feedback on social media and heard from folks about the items that they would like to see. And I think we're covering a lot of that. Youth programs came up a lot, as well as investment in our parks, trails, roadway infrastructure. I think that traffic calming reserve is really important. There's even the business incubator program, that was a comment that was left as well, right? Can there be more resources for our local small businesses? And so I really like how we've been able to do this process. I want to say thank you also to Mr. City Manager John Conley, because this was very helpful to kind of get some briefings before the meeting. I really enjoyed our conversations where we got to look over some of those preliminary drafts and identify how are we going to, what's our method, right, for diving into this surplus. And one of my big questions and discussions I've had with the community is, why is there a surplus? Well, ultimately, in layman's terms, the economy did better than we expected. And people continue to buy necessary goods and services and, make large transactions, purchase property, and ultimately engage in our economy in a way that, we were concerned wasn't going to be possible for our city. And when we think about that prosperity, I also have to wonder if there's anyone who's missing out on that prosperity. And with the city having such a great surplus, for me, it was really a priority to, hear from city staff, of course, about what are some of those items. And I did advocate for some of those items to be included on here. For example, I talked to John about that $25,000 for the Adobe facility equipment replacement, right? If people are going to be renting our facility, they should have quality tables and chairs. But also, what's something new that we can do to respond to the current moment where we are facing a great disparity in our country, where as much as we have prosperity and opportunity here in the city of Vista, and our economy is doing well, our businesses are doing well, yet there are still folks that are having a hard time making ends meet. And to me, the most poignant area of concern is our seniors and our elders in our community. And so I am asking the council to approve this list of requests today to also include $500,000 towards a senior housing subsidy. This has been something that's been brought up during many discussions within our homelessness strategic plan from members of the community. But it's also something that I think, we cannot take any more time to respond to the crises that is happening economically in our country, where seniors are the quickest growing group of people experiencing homelessness. Seniors are forced to pay astronomical rents, barely able to afford food on a fixed income. Sometimes seniors will deny their medical care and their basic needs because they need a place to live. So it really is very important to me that we get this through. That said, the motion on the table is, I'm a little bit concerned that, making sure that we have continued authority for any of these items, whether it be our senior housing subsidy, and we're gonna have, staff come back with program recommendations for that, or whether it be a law enforcement fund. I want to be able to have discretion over how those funds are ultimately used. And I'm not hoping to write a blank check to anybody. I want to make sure that the public funds that we are entrusted with tonight, that we show transparency and we continue to be responsible to the public. So I would just ask that there's expressed consensus across my council that for any future use of this newly added law enforcement fund, that we have discretion over those funds. Even if there's not full agreement, right, as to how to use those funds, I think that level of transparency is important. And I expect from city staff that we see that with every area of reserve. We will be having further discussions about traffic calming. We'll be having further discussions about the design of Luz Duran Community Center, right? Which, thank you, Councilmember for Contreras, for seeing your community's needs. And also for, I really think you deserve flowers for this. We have been dedicating monies over the past couple of years from our surplus into our stormwater maintenance fund. What happens when it floods? Okay, it could be very, very bad. But Councilmember Contreras has put aside for us $350,000 into our stormwater maintenance fund. I think that that is really important. And so seeing how staff broke this up to show not only staff priorities, but that we can come together and talk about what we really care about, I think that that's really amazing. And other cities are not having this discussion. Other cities are having a much more concerning discussion. And we have the opportunity to continue to do great things here in Vista. And I really appreciate all your work this past year, Council. I think we've done a really good job. We've been very prudent. And ultimately now we can turn things around and continue to bless our community. So thank you.
That's a good point you made. Just a clarification, any funds that get allocated to reserve account, would those come back in an operating budget to be approved by the council?
Yeah, they would exist in the general fund balance, and if they were ever to be allocated, they would, of course, have to be allocated for budgetary allocations from council.
So the council would have an opportunity to discuss and approve the use of those funds at that time?
Correct.
I just want to make that point because my thought about this is whenever we do consider adding personnel, and I know that I think we've got some requests coming for that, it's always a question of acquiring a new recurring annual liability. So having some funds that are set aside for that purpose would make it easier for us to know that we would be able to meet that obligation going forward, which is why I'm not suggesting a position right now. Instead saying this would help us to be able to add a position that's needed. Some of those needs have been identified, some have not, but this would give us some certainty in a coming budget cycle of knowing that when we make that allocation on a recurring basis, that we would be certain that we would be able to meet that obligation for, probably a couple of years to come. Councilmember O'Donnell.
I do not believe anything's been seconded yet, correct?
Correct.
I would ask if you'd offer or accept a friendly amendment to your motion, which would be to take $500,000 from traffic calming, $200,000 from the general reserve fund. So that would leave $300,000 to the general reserve fund, and we would do $500,000 for a law enforcement reserve fund, and then $200,000 to begin a public works reserve fund.
As long as you're okay with the word personnel after law enforcement, then yes.
Okay. If you'll accept that, then I will second your motion.
Very good. Thank you. Councilmember, anything else? Councilmember O'Donnell? Councilmember Contreras.
I'm sorry, that was going fast, and I tried to take, can you repeat it again, please?
So instead of $400,000 from traffic calming, we would take $500,000. Instead of $600,000 being allocated to a law enforcement personnel reserve, $500,000 would be allocated to that, and then $200,000 would begin a public works maintenance reserve.
So it's coming from also the general fund, okay.
Reserve. So that would be a $300,000 allocation instead of $500,000, and then instead of $1 million for traffic calming, we would do $500,000.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Listen, we've been, as a council, very diligent and prudent with the taxpayers' money, and we've been able to decrease our crime rate significantly. But I do want to continue that trend, and so I think it is important for us to put a reserve on the side, and thanks for finding a way to start your public works reserve. I know I see city manager smiling over there from ear to ear. Okay, I have some, and I would third that. I do have some questions. So when we're looking at the academic fund, scholarship fund, what's the current process for organizations to apply for that? Because I did talk to different orgs that didn't know how to access this. Are we, what's that outreach look like? What's the process? If someone could walk me through that.
So we did an RFP for the last round, but we did have the ability to extend the contract. So the plan was, rather than having to go through that process a couple of times, I believe it was for up to 3 years. So we will not, or we do not intend to put out another RFP for a couple of years.
That's really concerning to me. And I'll tell you why, because there's a lot of organizations. I don't see enough representation from a variety of organizations that provide scholarships. So I would not be in favor of extending a contract. I do think that we should go out for an RFP every single time. I know it's additional work, but I don't want anybody to think that this is just like, oh, yay, I got in and I get to have it almost indefinitely, which I know it's not indefinitely. But so is there a way to change that moving forward?
I talked with the city attorney on the current contracts and how that looks. Part of it was also a timing issue because we don't get this funding allocated until now. And so by the time we put it out and we get it, they want it for the end of the school year typically. So maybe we could talk about allowing the current one to continue for this school year and then putting an RFP out, over the summer, like basically spreading the money out. You know what I mean? So we would do it, but we would continue with some of the current ones as well, if that makes sense. I could bring back a plan.
Yeah, you know what? I would love to see a plan just because I am concerned. I love the organizations that receive the funding, but they're getting a huge amount of funding, some of these organizations. And I want to see a more diverse set of groups. So I'm okay with the direction of like, okay, now it's the end of the school year and they're going to do, and so I'm sensitive to the timing for sure. But I think after that is done, I definitely want to go out for an RFP. And I want us to, this is something that I would like to inform other organizations that it's going to be available. So if you could, potentially even just give me a timeline, and then I could start circulating that with different organizations. And the parameter for organization is what? Do they have to have a mailing address here in the city?
Yes, it does need to be a VISTA organization. Okay. The school that the person goes to or educational training does not have to be in VISTA, but the organization receiving the funds to allocate does.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, because I think Seroptimus even do different scholarships and stuff like that. So then I don't know where people's addresses are, but Bill de la Fuente Foundation, right? And so, okay, fantastic. Thank you, Kathy. I appreciate that. And then I have to address something, Councilmember Fox, but I'm going to ask City Manager first. When it comes to the CVBID, the $50,000 allocation, can you just remind me of the process for that?
Yeah, so the CVBID member funds right now come into the city, and then we take them to the CVBID committee, and they make recommendations on the use of that funding for special events typically.
And the $50,000 comes from where?
It comes from fees paid by the businesses in the CVBID.
Right. So actually, I knew that already, but I just want to have it on the public record. I really think that if the CVBID wants more funding, they just need to tax themselves higher. I want to have a little bit more oversight over the $100,000. I think that we can involve the CVBID and they can give recommendations to the council, and then we can, as a council, take those recommendations, see what the monetary amount is that's being recommended. I just want to have more oversight. It kind of goes in line with what we're talking about, that council should have final say, because there's different things, like Fright Night is growing exponentially, right? Dark Christmas is growing exponentially. So what I wouldn't want to see is some of these regional and national attractions that maybe could garner a lot of return on investment in this $100,000. I don't want to see them piecemealed to like, okay, here's another $10,000. When really, if we were to allocate like $30,000 to one of these, and I'm just spitballing, I'm not saying that this is what we should do, but just as an example, I just would really like to have the full authority, since this is coming from the city of Vista. So that would be my pushback on that. And lastly, I just do want to say that I'm totally open to having an apology from you, Mayor Franklin, for the comments that were made several council meetings where there was almost a lambasting that the new majority of this council was misusing funds, and we're sitting here with a 9.5 million plus reserve or additional funding for our year-end fund. So I'm totally open to an apology if you're willing to give that to the council. Thanks.
No, I don't think I owe anybody an apology. We had a proposal from staff that showed a $2 million deficit. And we've got an incredible number, and I was going to be nice and not call out all the litany of social welfare programs that you're establishing that we have absolutely no idea whether we'll be able to fund in the future. And as we've seen with some of the other giveaway programs that you've established, we create an expectation and an ongoing funding need. And we're grateful that the market returned greater returns than we thought. I'm glad that some of our anticipated budget items came in under budget. And frankly, I'm really grateful to our city manager and a management team and the finance team for doing some careful budgeting. But no, I owe you no apology. The discretionary expenditures that this council is authorizing are growing by leaps and bounds. And frankly, there will come a time, and hopefully it won't be soon, but we know not when it will come, but that it will come, that we will have a recession. And a lot of these programs are going to be the first things that are going to have to be cut. Otherwise, we're going to face reductions in necessary expenditures for public safety and other things. And I brought forward what I thought would be a very acceptable and palatable request for law enforcement funding. The reality is that law enforcement and firefighting, the public safety imperatives of our city, these are the most important parts of our budget. And we have not grown them as quickly as we are growing all the other components of the budget. So this council has not placed the emphasis that I would like to see on our core priority as a city, which is law enforcement funding. We still have not addressed the shortfall in law enforcement staffing that we have accrued over the last 20 years. And, I didn't come in tonight with the idea of making any contentious comments or discussion. I thought I crafted a suggestion here that could win some approval, and we do have needs that have been identified, and I appreciate your support for those. But no, I think, we really do need to get a handle on our spending. And, I wish that we were in a position that staff could tell us that we were going to have $9 million unallocated surplus again next year. But, that's not what I'm hearing. Do you think we're going to have a $9 million surplus again next year?
I wouldn't speculate on that, but looking back a year, last year's year-end fund balance was $6.7 million. So it really can vacillate year to year. Some of it was driven by last year, interest earnings, property taxes came in a bit higher, but really the contributing factors to year-end fund balance do vacillate from year to year. Interestingly, the last 3 years, I did look back, in the percentage between revenues over budget and expenditures under budget, that split between the total year-end fund balance, 55% of it being revenues over budget and expenditures under budget, that 45% split has pretty much held the last 3 years. There's no guarantee that will continue to hold, but that's somewhat of a pattern. But
well, that's
I
good.
couldn't speculate what we were going to have for this year's year-end.
And it is hard to peg it exactly. And I do appreciate that staff's always done a great job of making sure that we do finally come in under budget in our expenditures and over budget in our revenues. that means that you are doing a great job and that our city management team is doing a great job in designing these proposals for council. But no, I still have the concerns. And so, yeah, my previous criticism of the aggressive growth in spending stands. So thank you for that question. Okay, seeing no other requests for comment, we have a motion on the motion that I made, which is seconded by Councilmember O'Donnell. So let's vote on that. That motion is approved unanimously. And are there any other motions? I think we need a motion to approve staff's recommendation, receive and file the fiscal year 2024 fourth quarter financial report.
I'll move to approve.
I'd second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Councilmember O'Donnell, do you want to be recognized?
We're good.
Very good. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. That motion is approved unanimously. That'll bring us to the end of our agenda and time for council comments. We'll start with our staff. Do we have any comments from our city clerk's office? Okay, very good. I'll note that we reopened the Planning and Homelessness Commission, so we're still looking for a few applications there, right? Our city attorney, do you have anything else to add? City manager? Okay, very good. Councilmember Fox.
Well, I'll keep it short then as well. Great job tonight, everybody. I think we did some really good work and it came to some pretty good consensus. So, consensuses? I don't know. Yeah, I like consensi. We'll go with that. It's Taco Tuesday and I love my wife very much and I thank her for letting me serve.
Councilmember O'Donnell.
Good comments, Jeff. I appreciate those. Councilmember Fox, my apologies. I just want to wish everybody a happy belated Veterans Day. I want to give a huge shout out to Fred and our communications team. What a tremendous and spectacular event that went on yesterday. I had a lot of compliments, not just from elected officials, but just from people that were there in the audience and that reached out to me afterwards. So just wanted to say thank you for that, and thank you to all the veterans that showed up. They're just some remarkable stories that, they're incredible when you sit down and listen to them. So just thank you, everybody, for that. I had a town hall on Sunday. I just want to appreciate everybody that came out. I was trying to have a constructive conversation. I don't know if it ended up that way, but definitely appreciate the engagement and everybody who made it out. And outside of that, just want to thank my wonderful wife, Allie, who's at home. I know she's watching. Appreciate her, love her very much, and thank you for letting me serve on this body. And I appreciate the conversation from our council this evening. It actually was a very good, constructive dialogue, and I think we have a lot accomplished, and I think that we're going to have a lot of good things that come out of this year on fund balance. So good work, everyone.
Councilmember Contreras.
Yeah, ditto. The event for veterans was incredible. So thank you so much. It gets bigger and bigger every year, which is what I like to see. It means that we're doing more outreach, and it's definitely, I think, leaps and bounds ahead of what I've seen in some other cities. So, and the story, and your story, Councilmember O'Donnell, was fascinating as well. So I appreciate that you shared that. Well, actually, today is Wednesday. I'm so used to saying Guerreras en Acción por un Vista Limpio on Wednesdays, but they were out there already. And other than that, things on NCTD, I'm not sure if I shared this last time, but we're having conversations with the state, and the state came and presented. They happen to have some hydrogen trains, and so there is the potential. The state is really interested in formulating an MOU with NCTD to test out the hydrogen trains on the Lausanne corridor. So you'll probably be familiar with the Coaster corridor. It is called Lausanne. And so the MOU is not done yet, but one of the important things for me was ensuring that the state is also going to pay for our hydrogen fuel, because it is really high And I told them I will not accept an MOU that they don't pay for the fuel during the pilot program, and they said, we will pay for the fuel. So looking forward to that. I'll give you an update as soon as I can. Thanks.
Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, everyone, for the fantastic discussion. I had a lot of fun. I want to just say happy early Thanksgiving to everyone. It's, already November. It's crazy, but I'm hoping everybody has a really wonderful time with family and friends. And just want to say thank you to my council.
Okay, the City of Vista is accepting applications for residents interested in serving on the Planning Commission and Homelessness Commission. Both commissions play an important role in shaping city policies and programs. The Planning Commission reviews development proposals and makes recommendations on land use, zoning, and community growth, while the Homelessness Commission advises the City Council on strategies and initiatives to address homelessness in Vista. Applicants must be Vista residents age 18 or older. The deadline to apply is November 30, 2025. For more information and to submit an application, please visit vista.gov/news. And I want to thank all the members of the public who came out tonight, our staff for doing the great job that they always do with our budgeting and our management and all setting up our meetings. And thank you for the great work yesterday with our Vista Veterans event. That was fantastic. Again, thank you to our veterans for their service and all of our active duty military. And thank you to my wife for letting me serve. Have a good night, everyone.